This is an interview with Mr. Charles Greene, Charlesgreene.
Right.
This is an interview that's being done in the log cabin on the fairgrounds of Delaware County, and it is in connection with the Oral History Project about the Little Brown Jug. And we're doing this interview on September the 12th, 2019, and I first want to just say thank you very much for being willing to do this.
You're welcome.
Good. Okay. Let me just start by asking, how old were you when you first attended the Jug?
Well, the first time I attended the Jug was 1965. That was the first year. I came up here to see Brett Hanover, and when I left Xenia, it was pouring down rain. It rained all the way.
Yeah.
And when I got here, I was sure that they weren't going to have the races, because I had taken off from work to come up here to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I came to the fairground, and I was standing by, and Curly Smart was standing there, and I wondered what they were doing, because they had these machines that were taking, and they were rolling the mud off of the track after the rain had stopped. And I asked him, I said, what are you? He said, well, we're getting the track ready for racing. He said, we'll have it ready by the time we get ready to race. And sure enough, when the race time came, the track was actually dusty.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it. There was old rows of mud all along the fence, you know. So that was my first year. Then I came back the second year again, because I enjoyed it the first time.
Uh-huh.
And I was down by the fence, and I heard someone saying, "Hey, Butch, hey, Butch." And I said, well, who in the devil is calling me? Must be somebody from Xenia that I know. So anyway, over in the infield, somebody was saying, hey. I said, what? He said, and come find out it was my brother. Well, I didn't know that he was coming up to the races, but he knew a friend of ours named Herb Wilson. And he was the one that at the time was in charge of the guys that worked in the cabin and on the racetrack with, raking the track. And he said, let the guy tell you to come across the track. And the guy let me come across the track. And he said, do you want a job? He said that the one guy that was supposed to work said he didn't show up. I said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, oh, we're going to rake the track. So he gave me a rake, and he showed me, my brother. He's younger than me.
Okay.
See? And he showed me how we would rake the track and everything. And then Herb said, if you want this job, come back next year. And said, you can have this job. And I said, well, good. Well, anyway, that was in '67 already. That same year in October, after I had left here, General Motors called me to come to come to work. So I wasn't for sure whether I was going to be able to get off to come up. So come to find out that I did. And me and my brother raked that track until from that 1967 till he passed away in 2006. He passed away, he came up here that year, and he passed away that April in 2006.
Right. So the tradition of the Greene family actually starts with your younger brother.
My younger brother, he's the one that got me the job.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I continued after that, even though that he went rake. So his nephew started raking with me, and he raked with me for I don't know how many years it was, but then I got to the place where that my grandson asked me, and because I had to have a surgery done on my aorta where I had an aneurysm, and he's been raking ever since. So now, instead of me and my brother, it's my grandson and his nephew. I mean his grandson.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
So my grandson, his grandson.
Wow.
So they're still doing it, and like I said, I continue to come up and to help out.
Sure.
Well, that's all in the future. In the past, when we first started, if you want to get to another, I'm telling you a story or a history. You didn't even get to your other part. Anyway.
Yeah.
We stayed down by the blacksmith shop, and we stayed in our car because there wasn't nothing but a little small cabin, and you couldn't stay in there because there was no place for you to stay. It was just like a one room, just one big room.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there was another man. His name was Dave Decker. He used to park the cars and things. I'll let you get to your thing in just a minute.
Sir.
And anyway, we'd walk up and we would go over to the track, and we would get the infield judges stand and everything ready. Anything had to be done inside the cabin, we would do. And in the evening, a lot of times I would clean up we'd clean up the cabin and everything. And whenever they get ready to do the drawings and things, we get everything ready. And actually, we worked for the Thompsons.
Sure.
Hank Thompson, Tommy Thompson. They were very good friends to us, and we got along with them real fine. Hank was a nice guy. I used to have to take papers down to the fair office, and he'd be sitting in his office. He said, "Charles, get on in here and sit down." Said, "You ain't got to get back to the track right away." Said, "Sit on down here and talk to me." And Tommy was real nice to me and my brother, and he would invite us to different things, and we had a very good relationship with the Thompson, and I enjoyed it. So my wife didn't have no problems with it. I mean, my wife and I, we got along very good about that. For one thing is, my wife and I have been married for 65 years.
Congratulations.
So that was, that was a long time. But that's the first part of the thing. You can get started on I just want to give you a kind of a history,
Sure.
And he didn't like to stay in the cabin as much as I did. And I used to stay in here, and I used to help this one lady named Rachel. And they had a big old coffee pot, and I used to fix the coffee for all the guys and everything when they come in. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about them, I got a chance to meet a lot of the older trainers and drivers. Mm-hmm. And the one driver that I really met and became kind of good friends with was Irving, the one that drove Brett Hanover. And every time,
all those years back,
all them years that and when he would come to the race, even after he retired, and he'd come to the races, he'd always have me sit down and talk to him, And like I said, I met a lot of the trainers and drivers and the older ones, and I was talking to Billy O'Donnell last year, and he said, "Yeah, I remember you guys out there." And I talked to Ron Pierce and and all the ones like that. Well, I'll let you get back to your question.
It's okay.
I'm just going to give you a little.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You have seen a lot
Right.
of races.
Yeah, a lot of races, and met a lot of owners and trainers and drivers.
Is there a jug that for you stands out? It's really memorable.
Well, they were all exciting, but there was one horse, just one, that me and my brother didn't have very good thought. It was called Nero.
Okay.
And he was a horse that was afraid of air. He had more shadow rolls and things on his face, and he'd ride along and he'd be looking at you. So whenever he would go out to train or anything like that, they would have us to go over to the track and make sure that everything was off of the track and nobody was around to bother him, because everything bothered him.
Mm.
And he was the favorite to come in to the, and he didn't win.
About what year was this?
I forget what, just exactly what year it was, but like I said, I've seen, so far about 50.
Yeah.
Over 50.
Yeah.
So I just can't remember all of them, all of them were good races. We've seen some that we thought were good enough to win that didn't win. But like I said, I have enjoyed every bit of it. It's like anything else. In my opinion, you have good times on jobs and you have bad times on jobs. So that's about it. I mean, you can ask me some more questions. I know there's someone there you want to hear other than me chatter off about, about this,
So you have more than 50 years of experience. What are some of the big changes you would say have happened with the Little Brown Jug?
Where you're sitting at right now. The change from the little small cabin to this big nice cabin. Mm-hmm. See? And one of the changes that happened was, it wasn't long after the cabin was built, the man named Dave Decker, he passed away. Uh-huh. So Raymond and I, my brother, we asked Tommy, said, hey Tommy, said, look at here, said, would it be all right if Raymond and I stayed in the cabin at nights? Because we stay here all day, all night. Rather than in our car, we stayed here and watched the cabin for you. He said, well, would you willing? I said, yeah, we'd be willing to do that. Then that way we wouldn't have to drive back and forth to come to the cabin.
Sure.
So that's what we do now.
Okay.
So what I do is we stay here at nights, mm-hmm. And things like like it kind of keep the eye on the cabin. We open it up in the mornings, get the guys ready to go. Yeah.
So it's a change for the better.
Yeah. Then the other change is like over the years they've built like the Jug Ed barn. Mm-hmm. They built the Jug barn.
Right.
They've improved the track to where that it really is one of the fastest half-mile tracks in the country. I mean, I've seen a lot of changes. Most all of it's been good.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. I can remember when back in the back there was a fence and there was some apple trees and things back here. And that fence didn't go no further back than, I don't know, maybe 100 yards at the most. Mm-hmm. And then every year they took the fence down. They got the parking go back further and further. And then they had all the people started bringing all the motor homes in. Like I said, it's really been a big change. Like over here, same way with the motor homes.
Yeah.
It really has progressed to one of the better places.
Sure. Sure has.
Now, I'll give you an example of something that I seen that I didn't have. One year, I went down to Des Moines, Illinois, to the Hamiltonian,
right,
because I wanted to see Flower Child. Okay? And I drove all the way down there by myself to see it. And I was amazed at the track. It was a big half-mile track, and everything, and it was really nice. But it wasn't too long after that they moved it to the Meadowland up in
York.
New Jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I've heard, I don't know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. I hope they don't. That someday that they may move this, but I hope they don't.
Okay.
You know, I don't. You know, if I lived another 10 years, I would come up here another 10 years. But if they moved to somewhere else, you know, I don't know whether.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
You are how old now?
Well, I'm 83.
Congratulations.
See, I'm 83 now.
All right.
Yeah.
What would you say makes the Little Brown Jug special? There are a lot of other races.
Oh yeah, there really is. It's more of a close-knit atmosphere. You see what I mean? It's not like when you go to a large racetrack where the biggest majority of the people there are about betting and, you know, and things like that. This here is more about coming to see the races themselves. Now, like last night, a lady called, and I answered the phone where everybody had gone, and she asked me the question, what were the dates that they're going to race on? I told her, I said, well, they're going to race Sunday at 1 o'clock, and I told her they're going to race Monday at 3 o'clock, see, and Tuesday at 1, and then on Wednesday and Thursday, the races started at 11. She said, oh, I'm not concerned about them two. Said, but I like to come to the races, and but sometimes I don't like coming when there's a large crowd. But you know, I've been to a lot of fair races around in Ohio, and there's none that compare to it.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people say that the races that Greene feel compared to it, but I don't. You know, I've been there, but it's a nice. You know, they have nice races, but I've been to a lot of racetracks. I used to go down to Latonia racetrack down in Kentucky, down to when they had the old Latonia racetrack, and they would race thoroughbreds and standardbreds. And I've gone. We used to go down to the Red Mile every year after the races, and we enjoyed going down there. And I met a lot of people down there. A lot of people that we met down there would say, "Well, you know, I see you guys up there wrecking tracks. Say, how come you ain't wrecking the track down here?" Say, "Well, they do it a lot different down there."
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, is there a special way that you and your brother and now grandson and so on, a special way that you take care of the track?
Well, what I was told, because Curly Smart, I talked to him and about it, and when I first started about why that, you know, they said what it is, by way that the infield where they do the presentations at is on the infield. So what happens is all these people come from the grandstand over there to the infield. So what they do, they track up all the tracks. And he said that basically horses are almost like people. Okay, here's the thing. If you were going down the thing and you seen a path and you wasn't for sure whether it was a path or a ditch, you would either step over it or jump over it, right? A horse looked at it the same way. Now, if the tracks are going this way, it don't bother them. But he says that the tracks coming across, because then they want to jump over it. And I've seen a lot of them do it. They'll stand there and they'll jump, you know, like that, kind of hesitate and jump over it.
So in a way, you're showing them the right way to go.
Right. In other words, what happens is that with all the people running back and forth across the track, and just before the races start, my brother and I would rake the tracks up. So we come up with a system of, he was always in the back and I was in the front. So what happens is when he rakes this way and I rake this way, we cover up. See, we got to the place where we were, we got into a rhythm. That's how we did it. Like that. And people, believe it or not, a lot of the photographers would actually come out and take pictures of us doing that. It was almost like we were dancing together. We were.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and we had a good time about that.
So you have passed along the dance to your grandchild?
Yeah, my grandson, kind of pretty well got it down.
Great.
Okay, now you go a little fun.
One of the things that you mentioned was like maybe Delaware might not have the jug in the future. And I'm just wondering, what do you think that would mean?
Well, I would think it would take away a very good tradition because of how long the jug had been here. Just like, I don't know whether it made a big difference when they moved the Hamiltonian to the large city, because the Hamiltonian was at a small, in DeQuoin, Illinois. It wasn't like being up, where everybody comes from New York and Jersey, like that, and things like that.
Yeah.
So it would be an impact, because actually, where would you move it to?
Good point.
That's
Sure,
the
sure.
next one. I've been to Northfield. It's a nice track and everything, but it's still not the setting like this is.
Yeah.
So if I had a vote, I'd vote to keep it right here.
I bet you would.
Yeah.
I think a lot of other people would
Yeah.
as well. Okay. Are there some other topics, some other sorts of things that you would want to share? Again, the goal of this oral history is to record stories of people who have loved this race for a long, long time. And I'm wondering if there are any memories or any other stories or topics that you think we really ought to hear about. Is that a topic?
I don't know. Well, I can get into one, but
Okay.
I'm not going to get into a lot. But I had a incident that happened to me years ago, and I don't mention it too often. I was working in the old cabin. Well, there's two instances, two of them. Okay. I'll give you both of them.
That's good.
Now this, okay. I can't remember what year it is, but anyway, I was in the cabin cleaning up. This car pulled up, and a guy runs to the door and jumped on. I said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've got an entry here, but I need to leave." Said, I've got to leave it because it's got to be in the morning, and I have to leave and go somewhere else. I said, "Well, there's nobody here right now to do it." He said, "I've got it all filled out." Said, "Can I leave it?" I said, "Well," I said, "I'm just a caretaker." I said, I don't know whether I should do this or not." He said, "Oh, I sure would appreciate it." I said, "Well, okay." So he said, "Well, here, just put it." So he gave it to me. I took it in the office, and I put it in there, and the guys that take the entries. So that next morning, first time when they come in there, I said, "Hey," I said, "this guy stopped by here and left this paper here for y'all, and told me to give it to you when you first come in." So I give it to him, and come to find out, it was an entry to one of the jug horses. Well, my heart really started to beat then, that I'm glad I give it to him. Lo and behold, let's see, wait a minute now. I lost my thought when I was talking. The horse that he gave me ended up winning that race. Ended up winning Little Brown Jug. Then Webster was the driver, and the horse's name was C-Train. And C-Train won the race. And I said to myself, I sure am glad he won, and I'm glad I got that, that paper in.
So you're the reason that horse was able to win the jug.
But I never, matter of fact, you were only about the second person I ever told that.
Well, thank you very much. That is an important story to tell.
Then, the other one, I was in the old cabin, and Bob Steele, the judge, him and two other judges, they come in. Charles said, there's some guys coming here. Said, when they get here, said, you get them in here, and you shut the door when they get in here. I said, okay. So next thing I know, here a limousine pulls up. The guys come in, and they went in there, and this other guy the guy said, now you stand here and wait with him, and said, don't move. And they went in that little back office. There was a little back office, and boy, I tell you what, there was more HILL raised in there than a little bit. Something that happened. There was something about a fight that happened on the racetrack years ago. Two of the drivers, something happened, and they got to fighting. And boy, I tell you what, Bob Steele went up and down them guys. And boy, I tell you, that them two guys, them two bodyguards or whoever they were, I don't know who they were, but what I'm telling you, that was another one thing that I remember.
Sure.
But like I said, I've had a lot of owners that were real nice to me, that we used to have to take a lot of their stuff back to, and different things. And I met a lot of them. And another individual that was very nice to me and my brother was Charlie and Laverne Hill.
Okay.
I don't
know that.
Yeah, Charlie and Laverne Hill were very, very, very nice. And I talked to Charlie, and come to find out that Charlie Hill was from the same place that my father was from. And he knew he didn't know my father, but his father knew my father, because they were both from Wilmington, Ohio.
Ah.
And Charlie Hill his father had a store down there. And that's where we got to talking, and I told him who I was. He said, well, my father used to come in, my grandfather used to come in his store.
Speaking of coincidences, it turns out Roger Houston
here we go.
Grew up in Xenia.
Yeah,
and he knew you when you were how old?
Well, I was in my 20s.
And he was about 16?
Yeah, I'm about a few years older than Roger.
Okay.
I'll get to that story and tell you what it was all about. Okay. It had to be around 78 or 79. 78 or 79. I was driving this taxi cab for Homer Johnson. Roger, his mother worked in this store called James's Supermarket. And I drove this old cab. And Roger worked in the supermarket during the time he was in school or whatever. And he I guess he was worked in as a sacker or something. Mm-hmm. So I'd always come down there and pick up customers that, whenever they needed a ride. So I told Roger, I said, hey, Roger, look at here. I said, you want to make a quarter or two? Roger said, yeah. I said, Roger, anytime anybody needs a cab, I said, you let me know. He said, I'll give you a quarter for every one. Roger kidded me now. Roger said, I ain't give him that quarter yet. And Roger tell that story, and in his book, it's in that book about where where me and him met at. And like I said, I knew his mother because she worked in there, and I used to do a lot of deliveries for her, from the store and everything. But Roger and I have been friends for ever since then. And the same year that Tom Thompson got inducted into the Hall of Fame up in New Jersey, well, I told Tommy and my brother and I right there, and Roger told that story about me. But that was one of my really memorable. I was glad I was able to go up to Tommy's induction into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I hated it when both Mr. Hank Thompson and Tommy both passed away, because I lost two good. And a lot of the guys that I first started working with in the cabin have all passed away except Roger. Yeah. That was the early years. As far as I know of, me and Roger are the only two.
Wow.
Yeah, all the other guys have mostly all passed away. Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Really appreciate you doing this.
You want to go any further? You have anything else?
I have just one or two.
All righty.
If that's okay.
I almost told you my whole story.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. I guess one of them is, you mentioned that there are certain races. You remember certainly the 1965 mud. You remember a horse that was really nervous.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite drivers or favorite trainers, people who over the years you really admired?
I knew a lot of the drivers, and I was very friendly with a lot of them, and a lot of them appreciated like what we did. Now I'll give you a few like John Campbell was very nice. He'd always talk to you and speak to you no matter where he seen me at. David Miller was like a Dave Pallone, and 'cause I used to go up to the Adios in Pennsylvania. One of the owners and trainers that I was wait a minute, the man that owned the Adios, and he'd always come in and he'd always say, "Where's Charles?" Said I gotta see him before I leave. And a couple of times, one time he had to get over to the main office over there and for something, and Tommy said, "Charles," said, "you get on the cart and take him on." He said, "Well, there's a big crowd out there." He said, "We can't get." I said, "I'll get you over there right now." So I knew how to go out of here, go all the way around the back, go all the way around the corner, and all the way back, and drop him off right at the office. He said, "Charles," said, "I never thought about going the way that you did." He said, "Now you didn't even have to fool with no of them people." But like I said, I've had a lot of memories, about different things, and a lot of owners and people, and whenever we'd go down to the Red Mile, and Tommy would always come and see if me and Raymond were there, and he'd come and sit and talk to him, and different things like that. And a lot of the guys, I could sit here and name you different ones that I worked with, and I was, whenever I'd go somewhere, and then I've lost some of the names that like Jason Stoudemire. He was a young kid when he came here, and me and him become good friends. And I mean, there's so many of them. I just cannot. Sometimes I just get a thought about them, and I get to talking about them, and I lose track of their names and things like that. I've met so many.
Yeah.
I had a good guy I used to stay with down at. I used to talk to. He'd always come up to the old cabin. His name was Thin Dime Murphy. Thin Dime Murphy worked for Curly Smart. See, and we stayed down there by him. He'd always come up to the cabin, and I'd always put him 2 cans of beer in the little cooler, and he'd come in and he'd look all around. He had his little sack. He'd give me a little sack. Said, "Hey, Charlie," said I put his 2 little beers in there. Old Thin Dime, boy, I tell you, he can tell you some stories that but like I said, I run into so many. That I never would have if I had never worked here.
Right.
That that I met.
Actually, that is the last question I wanted to ask you. If you were going to suggest people for us to interview, because leaving them out would be a sin, are there some folks who immediately come to mind? You really ought to interview a certain person or two.
Who I would want to or you to interview me?
I'm doing the interview, and we want to get their stories recorded because they have great stories to tell.
I right offhand, I couldn't, like I say, I've heard so many stories about from different ones and everything, and I've talked to a lot of them about different things, and I don't know. Some of them can tell you some things you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
I remember one time I talked to this one. I seen Herb Fuyan, and he did that thing where he stood up in the cart and and I asked him. I talked to him, and I said, "What made you do that?" He said, "Oh hell, I just felt like doing it."
It's famous.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen, all right. In my opinion,
Yeah.
if I had to do it over again, I would do it over again.